Hey friends, it's Rana, and today I'm gonna tell you about my top 6 books I read in the year 2023. I know this video might be a little bit late, but I prefer to finish the year, read all the books I can in that year, then think about it and decide what the top books I read in that year, not to make this video like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the year ends, because I am afraid that I might read a book that will be in the top spot. That's why I always wait for the year to end. I usually make like a top 10 list for the best books of the year, but this year I only have 6 books on the list because I read like 75 books this year in 2023, a little less than what I usually read in the previous years I have been on BookTube. 25 of these 75 books are manga, so realistically, I only read 50 real full-on books, which is a little bit low compared to the previous years. That's why my list of top books I read this year is a little bit shorter. I didn't have that many 5-star reads in 2023. It is not my worst year ever. My worst reading year was 2019, and we don't talk about her here because that was a horrible reading year for me. So let's start talking about the top 6 books I read in 2023. There are no particular order. I am just mentioning them chronologically from the first I read in 2023 till the last one. I'm not gonna mention every 5-star book I read because not all of them I will consider my all-time favorite. Like for example, I read all the published Spy Family volumes out, and a lot of them were 5 stars for me, and I really enjoyed that manga, but I'm not gonna mention it here. So I'm gonna talk about only the 6 best books I read. The first book we have is Lost in the Moment and Found by Shannon Maguire. This is the 8th installment in the Wayward Children series by Shannon Maguire. I can't believe that I have been following the series for like 9 years now, and the 9th book will be released this month in January of 2024. And I never been a Harry Potter kid when the books were being released, so I never experienced this joy of waiting for the next book to be released in a long series, because I always start reading a series when it is completed. This series is the only one that I've been dedicated to their new releases of for the longest time. Basically, the series is a portal fantasy series following wayward children who find doors to other worlds. These worlds might fit some of them and be the best thing that ever happened to them, but not so much for other people. Each book in the series focuses on one character. Some people say that you can read any book in any order of the series, but this is not true. I have an old video of mine where I explained the good order you can read these books, because it is not true that you can read any book anytime without spoiling the other books. Some books are connected to others, some are not. So the books in the series, like half of them, focus on a certain character and their world that they travel to, and other books focus more on the school life side of the story. I prefer the one where we follow the characters and their worlds. This installment, we follow Antoinette, who finds a door that leads her to a shop for Lost and Found, and this word is a little bit different than all the words we read about in previous books, because you feel like it is a word in between. This shop of Lost and Found has doors that open to different words, and she can travel to other words through the shop. And she starts working in the shop with a raven, a talking raven, and another character. It is a really good book, but however, I believe it is the darkest installment in the series. This book tackles a darker subject than the previous ones. Some of the previous books had some really serious dark themes and subjects, but this one I believe was the heaviest. It mainly focused on child abuse / negligence. It is now one of my top 3 books in the series. I love the gloomy atmosphere of the shop. It made you uneasy, feeling like something is wrong, but you don't know what exactly. I'm gonna read you favorite quotes of each book to give you like an idea of the writing style and the vibe of the book. No, Only the ones who aren't made right for the words where they started out need doors. All children may want them. Who doesn't want a grand adventure? But needing and wanting aren't the same, and the doors see the difference. Some children need to escape from places that will only hurt them or grind them away until they are nothing, and some children need to go somewhere else if they are ever going to grow into the people they were meant to be. The doors choose carefully. The next book we have is a book written in Arabic called الإنجيل برواية القرآن by فراس السواح. Another book by this author. You may be familiar with this cover because he has a long series of mythology and religions in Mesopotamia and the Levant area. And this is another book I read by him. I believe this is the third book I read by him. The series is very long. I believe there are like 26 or 27 books in it. It is a nonfiction series that talks about history, religion, and mythology. And this one is number 20 in the series. I don't read them in order, even though a bookseller recommended that or advised me that I read them in order, but not all the books in the series interest me, so I only pick and choose what I want to read. This book is a comparative religion book where it compares biblical stories, and they're like Quranic versions of them, like, you know, Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam has like the same origin and they have the same stories. So this book compare the same stories between the Bible and the Quran to see the differences and similarities between them. It is a great book. I was afraid I'm not gonna enjoy it because the previous book I read about mythology and the meaning of mythology, I didn't really enjoy that much, but this book was perfect. I don't have a particular quote from this book to tell you about, so we're gonna skip this one. The next book we have is The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. This is the third and final book in the Devabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty, and since it is the last book and the finale, I can't say much about it, but the series overall is a fantasy series inspired by Arabic, Islamic, and Middle Eastern mythology, following a girl called Nahri, living her normal life in 18th century Cairo, where one day she accidentally summons a jinn warrior called Dara, and she slowly finds out that she might not be a normal human girl after all. The jinn warrior sweeps her to Devabad, a jinn city, where we also follow another character called Prince Ali. He is my favorite. I love him. And this series is full of political intrigue, war, discrimination, oppression, and love, and it is so damn good. This book is the conclusion to this trilogy, and it didn't disappoint at all. It gave me everything I wanted from a finale. It was so good. Most fantasy readers who read this trilogy love it, but there is a small group of people who didn't really enjoy it, and some even DNF the first book, and that's okay. But if the synopsis sounds interesting or intriguing to you, believe me, you have to pick it up and try it. It is so good, especially if you have like a background, Islamic background or Arabic background. Knowing the mythology and the things mentioned in this book makes it a whole lot better of an experience. Also, this trilogy is more focused on the characters than the plot, and that surprised me a lot when I enjoyed it because I'm more of a plot reader than character reader, but this was the exception. Not wanting to be destroyed by despair doesn't make you a coward, it makes you a survivor. The next book we have, for a change, is a classic, and it is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is my first time ever reading a Russian translated book, and it didn't let me down. This book is hard to describe, but I actually prefer if you go into it knowing as little as possible, because that's how I did it and I really enjoyed it. It follows Raskolnikov, who, under certain circumstances and against his better instincts and judgment, he commits a murder. And we follow him before, during, and after that, and how he struggles mentally with what he did. It is a tragic book, but I loved it. It was so good. I didn't read it. This copy is pirated copy, and I didn't like the feel of the paper, and the cover is hideous. But I listened to it while I was solving one of the puzzles I have over my bookshelves, and it was amazing. I loved it. I loved listening to it. It is so full of powerful, meaningful quotes. That's why I plan in the future to purchase another beautiful, prettier edition and read it to highlight everything I liked in this book. I actually have a lot of quotes I love from this book, so I'm gonna read you more than one. I used to analyze myself down to the last thread, used to compare myself with others, recalled all the smallest glances, smiles, and words of those to whom I've tried to be frank, interpreted everything in a bad light, laughed viciously at my attempts to be like the rest, and suddenly, in the midst of my laughing, I'd give way to sadness, fall into ludicrous despondency, and once again start the whole process all over again. In short, I went round and round like a squirrel on a wheel. Pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. The really great men must, I think, have great sadness on earth. We sometimes encounter people, even perfect strangers, who begin to interest us at first sight, somehow suddenly, all at once, before a word has been spoken. The next book we have is a nonfiction medical book. You know, it is not possible for me to make my best book list of the year without having a medical nonfiction book on it, and this one is The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Van der Kolk. Because let's be real, my list will never be complete without a nonfiction book on it, will it? In short, this book talks about trauma and its effects on our bodies and brains. I have a very short review video of it talking about it more if you would like to go and check it out. And if I'm gonna be honest with you here, I believe this is my top read of 2023. And it is funny because I believe that last year my top read of 2022 was also a medical nonfiction memoir, and it was War Doctor by Mr. David Nutt. I love this book. They are different from each other, but similar in the aspect that they are nonfiction medical books. This was more scientific, and this one was more memoir, emotional, and will rip your heart out of your chest type of book. Traumatized people chronically feel unsafe inside their bodies. The past is alive in the form of gnawing interior discomfort. Their bodies are constantly bombarded by visceral warning signs, and in an attempt to control these processes, they often become expert at ignoring their gut feelings and in numbing awareness of what is played out inside. They learn to hide from themselves. As long as you keep secrets and suppress information, you are fundamentally at war with yourself. The critical issue is allowing yourself to know what you know. That takes an enormous amount of courage. And the last book we're gonna talk about today, it was a last minute read, and that's why I don't make this video early, because this might happen, and it did. The book is Convenience Store Women by Sayaka Murata. This book follows Kyoko Furukura. She is 36 years old. She has been working in a convenience store for like 15 plus years, and she loves her work. She loves her job. She is excellent at it. But people, family, friends, society pressure her to find something better to do in her life than being a worker in a convenience store. Because this job in Japan is considered to be like a part-time job for students and people in between jobs, not to make it a whole career for oneself. It is a very, very short book. I read it so quickly, like on 2 bus rides from work to home, and it was a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, because most of the Japanese literature books I read weren't my thing. I don't know what was different in this book, but I loved it so damn much. Kyoko, I loved reading about her mundane life, her work, her colleagues. I loved listening to the mundane life of Kyoko, her work, her colleagues. I really enjoyed that. And the annoying character that entered her life and changed changed it completely. This book has a brilliant message in it, and I believe that this book must be studied and analyzed in uni classes, because it is so important to teach people that you don't have to do what people are doing. You just do what makes you happy, what you enjoy doing. You don't have to have this flashy corporate job to be happy in your life. You can have a simple job and be happy with it and good at it. It also has dark humor at places that I really appreciated, because it added a flair to the book, and it is just my kinda humor I enjoy, because you don't expect it and it's suddenly there. This book also has a lot of good quotes. The normal world has no room for exceptions and always quietly eliminates foreign objects. Anyone who is lacking is disposed of. So that's why I need to be cured. Unless I'm cured, normal people will expurgate me. Finally, I understood why my family had tried so hard to fix me. Now that I'm looking at this list of my favorite books of 2023, you can see how my year was and how my mentality was, because 4 out of these 6 books are really dark and gloomy and depressing. The only thing that I read and made me happy in 2023 is Spy Family. In December, I read it and it was so fun and made me happy, which was a good thing for me to do at the end of the year after reading all these dark books. It is now like a tradition of mine to finish the reading year with a manga. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to see my next video, which will be Worst Books of 2023. And I will see you next time. Bye!